Good evening, Jake.
Evening, Keith. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good,
Had a good
good.
day?
Yeah, it's been really good. Actually, it's been really good. I'm getting excited working on some of these new trips, but I'm also getting a little bit kind of I don't know how you'd say it, looking out the window, wanting to be out again. So, how would you describe that? What's the word?
I can't think of the term.
I can't think of
Yeah,
the word. Yeah, it's been good because I've been enjoying looking at all the new places, but then at the same time, it's like okay, I want to go out and do them now. So, but yeah, it's been a good day. How about you?
yeah, not too bad. I've been writing new kit lists today and updating all the kit lists. So very exciting day for me.
Shorts
But
made up the list.
shorts, yeah, flip flops, standard trekking
That's
kit list.
that's that's the end of your kit list.
That's it. Well, I mean, I've come dressed for today's show. I've got my Namche t-shirt on because today we are going to be discussing all things Nepal. So hello to everyone that's currently online watching us. Stick a hello in the comments so we know who's jumped on live to watch this, another edition of the Bucket List Adventure Travel Show. So today we are going to be discussing everything Nepal and potentially answering any questions that people might have on Nepal. If you've booked a Nepal trip with us, if you've got any questions, if you're thinking about booking a Nepal trip, if you don't know which Nepal trip to book, if you don't think, whatever your question is, please do stick it into the comments and we will get around to asking you as well. And keep an eye on the comments as well, because it might be that as we go through this, then potentially we might be posting some links to the podcast or some videos or any other resources we've got to help you out to decide whether or not Nepal is a country for you. Now, I had to send my passport off this week because it is finally full. All my pages are, and I was looking through it, and it was like there was quite a lot in my passport of Nepal visas in there because I have been to Nepal quite a lot of times. I mean, I was pretty disappointed actually that my passport had only lasted me 5 years when it's a 10-year passport and I've got to renew it already because I've got no pages left. But
it's a bit double-edged though. It's disappointing, but at the same time, it's quite satisfying to have filled it before you have to renew
it's
it.
very
If you
satisfying.
got to like 9 years, then you could say I got my money's worth, but also,
Well, and also I don't if people don't know this, but you can. I mean, the biggest problem now is that obviously traveling through Europe, you never used to have to get a stamp on your passport, so it saved the pages for.
Yeah.
But of course, everywhere we go now, we are getting stamps in our passports, so they are going to fill up an awful lot quicker than they used to. So I have opted for a 50-page passport this time. So if you are needing to renew it, you can pay a little bit extra and get yourself a 50-page passport. And I'm also, which I didn't know about, but you can get a second passport as a frequent traveler as well. So if you are traveling a lot and you are having to send your passport off for visas, etc., which is what we have to do quite often, you can get yourself a second passport. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets accepted and mine does come through, because that could be quite handy.
I didn't know you could do that, but that'd be really useful. Try and get a couple.
Well, it's useful if you lose it as well, because if you keep them separate, you can always find one of them, can't you? That's the other thing. And you hope. And the other interesting thing as well is, because some places, like I didn't realize that if you had gone to Cuba, you then can't go into America on a normal ESTA visa if you've been to Cuba. So
I think you can. I think it's just a bit tricky.
It depends whether they stamp your passport or not.
Depends on whether they stamp it, and then you've got to declare it.
And then, I mean, Pakistan's another one. Places that border with Pakistan, they don't like it. Israel's another one that they've got. You can't go to certain places if you've had Israel on your passport.
There's a couple of places that you'd have to send your passport away to go and get the visa or the stamp on it, and then you're without it. So for us, if we're traveling between countries, then if we've got to send our passport off for an extended period of time, then we're sort of that writes us off for running those trips.
Yeah, exactly. So it might be that if you travel a lot, you can get a second passport. There's Keith's tip of the day. And also get yourself a 50-page passport if you are going to be traveling quite a bit. So we've got a few people online. A few people have said hello. Hello, Anne. We've got Sean online as well, who is doing our putting our links into the comments today. So I don't think she's going to be as quick as Tom was last week for us. I think she might need a little bit of work on that, but we hope she'll pick up on it and do half as good a job as what Tom did last week. We'll be happy with that from Sean. I think
he was quick. He
was very quick last week. I mean, Sean's on a week's holiday, so thanks for coming, Sean, and jumping onto the live as well. And actually, she's not moving very quick anyway at the minute because she's on her back in, so she's probably laying on a floor somewhere, not being able to move anyway. So
I spoke to her about 20 minutes ago, and she was laying on the floor, and I was like, "Is this the call for help? Like, how many days you've been on the floor before you can reach your phone now?" And
so her phone might go flat in a minute because she hasn't been able to plug it in for the last 24 hours because she hasn't been able to move. So hope you're feeling better, Sean. But thanks for coming on and helping us this evening as well. So if you've got any questions on Nepal, please do put them into the comments, and we are keeping an eye. I've got 3 screens open at the minute to try and keep up with any comments or any questions that come in. But Nepal was one of our first ever trips that we ever did, because when we launched the Bucket List Company 2016, those iconic bucket list trips that everyone wanted to do was Everest Base Camp, Machu Picchu in Peru, Mount Toubkal in Kilimanjaro. They were kind of our 4 first trips that we ever did, and Everest Base Camp had to go on the list because it is on people's bucket lists. It's one of the one of the most popular trips.
I grew up, I remember I must have been 9, 10. I saw a documentary on Everest. And since then, it had always had a place in my mind as somewhere that I'd wanted to go. And I think a lot of people who we take on these, trips have got the same sort of background in terms of they've read about it, they've seen documentaries and films, and that sort of inspired them to, go out and see it in person. So to actually get to tick that off, I know the first time I was lucky enough to go was really special, and it's still special every single time, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think the iconic thing about being in Nepal is just the scenery that you have, and the fact that you are around 8,000 meter peaks, and whether or not that's you are on the Everest Base Camp trek or whether you're doing the Annapurna Circuit trek over the other side, like, you are just amongst the most amazing views that you've ever seen.
It is. It's really hard to put it into perspective. I think even when I'm out there, it takes me a couple of days for it to seem real, if that makes sense. Especially when you get to the last parts of the trek and you're looking at the scale of the mountains, it's really hard to put that into context. So it's just brilliant. It's definitely like up there with one of my favorite destinations to go to.
It was really funny.
Go on so many different trips, and they all give you something different.
Yeah, it was really funny because obviously last week I did the podcast with Richard Woods.
Yes, I loved that. That was really good.
And I went back and rewatched some of his vlogs that he had done. And the funniest bit in that one was where one of the guys from the trip had run out going, "You could see Everest for the first time." You could see Everest. And they were at the wrong side of the building. They were looking at a completely different mountain, thinking this mountain was absolutely amazing. And it was like a 6,000 meter mountain that was like right down by the tea house. And they were like, "No, actually, it's you need to go up that way and look in that direction, and you can't see Everest at the minute." But
that was brilliant. Yeah, because Gareth and I were sat in the tea house at it was Tengboche, and Gareth and I were sat in the tea house, and they all started running out, and I won't name any names, but he comes running in and he goes, "Guys, I can see Everest," and the tea house just emptied. Everybody came out. And Gareth and I sat there, and I turned to Gareth and I went, "You can't see Everest from here." And he went, "No, you can't." So we sort of just stayed in.
Not from that angle they had gone to anyway. But Okay, so we've got some questions that have come in to the office. One of the questions that we've had over the last few weeks is about food options in Kathmandu, especially for those who are on a meat-free diet. What's available? Well, I mean, in Kathmandu, you've got every choice going. I mean, you won't have any problems in Kathmandu on a trip because they have everything from burger restaurants to traditional Nepalese to Indian restaurants to, we've got some of our favorites that we like to go to. And then on the trek as well, like thinking about food on the trek, when you're on the trek, like if you're on a bucket list trip, then all of your food is included. And I will just say that, like, if you are looking around and thinking about, I want to do an Everest base camp trek, do compare all of the different itineraries between companies. And I'm not saying we are the best to go with. There's plenty of other companies to go with. But what companies offer are two completely different things in terms of the itinerary. So, for example, we do include all of our food. Some companies don't include their food into the trips, and then when you actually look down and look at the small print, it says like allow $400 cash to take with you on the trek to pay for your food every day. So by the time you add that $400 into the price, then we're kind of competing on price at that point. So do have a look and think about that. But when you're on a trip in Nepal, whether it's the Annapurna Circuit Trek, whether it's an island peak, whether it's an Everest base camp, Gokyo, Mira Peak, whatever, you'll get into the tea house and there is a menu in the tea house, and those menus are pretty standard as the trek goes on, in terms of every tea house pretty much has the same menu. And you'll just be able to choose from that menu on a daily basis. And if you're a non-meat eater, then, I mean, I am a meat eater, but from Namche, after Namche, maybe Tengboche, I'll generally stop eating meat and go on to a veggie diet anyway, just because everything has to be carried up the same way that you're going. So,
well, that's what I was going to say, is that for those people who are, who do have dietary requirements, the guys are really good at catering for that. And when it comes specifically to a meat-free diet, then actually for the majority of the trek, it is going to be a vegetarian diet. That's just sort of mountain life. It's like you say, nothing can be killed actually on the or in the grounds of the national park. So if it has been killed and brought up, it's been trekked up however many days you've been trekking up. So just kind of bear that in mind, that how long are you prepared to, or how long would you tolerate your food?
They don't walk it up refrigerated, that's for sure.
No.
So
I've seen a couple of porters carrying what looked like fridges on their backs with the size of what they're.
I have actually got a picture of a porter carrying a double chest freezer on his back, which is a very interesting photo. And then another question that we've had come in is, do you need a visa before you get to Kathmandu? Can you talk through the process? So do you want to take that one away, Jake? I'm going to try and find this photo of a.
Well, if you can't, I've got another one that's very, very similar. So let me know, because I might be able to find that one. But if you so getting your visa for Nepal, so you can apply for that beforehand. I tend to just get mine at the airport. There's a couple of things that make that process easier, and that is I'll fill out a little bit of the paperwork that you have to do in the airport before I get there. So what happens is when you land, you'll go in, you'll get checked in, and there's all of these different lines, there's all of these different queues, and it depends on what stage of the visa you're at. So there'll be a bit where you have to put all your details in, and then once you've done that, you go to the desk and you get a stamp, and once you've got that stamp, you go to a different desk and you pay the money, and then once you've paid the money, you go to a different desk, and then they eventually give you your visa. But what you can do is you can fill out some of that paperwork beforehand. So rather, especially if you're the type of person who likes to let everybody else get off the plane standing up, and let them get off before you get off the plane, a lot of them will queue in front of these interactive screens. Now, I'll be careful what I say, because they are good, but they're not always the quickest. And some people,
when they're working,
when they're working, and some people don't always have the ability to press the right buttons and things like that. So you could end up waiting quite a long time. So what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to send out links and things like that if you are going on a base camp trip. or a Nepal trip, sorry. But actually, you can find that on the government website. So fill that out before you get there. You can go straight through to pay the money for your visa and then get it stamped, and that makes the whole process fairly straightforward. And that's what I do. But you can go through and get that done before as well.
There is a porter carrying a double chest freezer, and just to confirm, there was a double chest freezer in there as well. So
that is completely ridiculous.
Yeah,
you do see some really funny stuff, and we sort of explain that every time we go up. You say to people, well, you'll get the porters, and they're going to be carrying your duffel bags, but you'll also see the yaks and the donkeys and people carrying other pieces of equipment up. But it's always when you get to Namche and then Dingboche where you see the pool halls, so the snooker halls, and then people start to clock, hang on, how did that snooker table get all the way up here? that's always quite funny.
It's a heavy piece of slate to carry up to Dingboche, that's for sure. Can you talk about the add-ons available on Nepal trips? So on a Nepal trip, there is one add-on available, and you could add this on to either an EBC Island Peak, an EBC Gokyo, or an Annapurna circuit trek, where you can add on to go to Chitwan National Park. And it is a really, really stunning add-on in terms of if you want to see the wildlife in Nepal, then Chitwan has it all. For the elephants, to the rhinos, to the birds, like it is just stunning to go down there. Like the lodge where you stay is really nice. You head out on safari, do a canoe ride, go and see the crocodiles. Like it is a really good add-on to go and do. Takes you a little bit of a while to get down there. It's a bit of a windy drive. We can, if you want to, you can upgrade it and fly without having to do the drive, which personally I would advise. But you can talk to the team in the office about that. But, the add-ons are great. If you've got the time to go and do an add-on, then go and do an add-on. But obviously the Everest Base Camp treks and things like that, you are already out there for quite a long time. So it's why we don't have many add-ons for Everest Base Camp or any of the Nepal trips, because you are already taking quite a bit of time out of work to go and do an EBC trip. The Chitwan is actually included in our best of Nepal trip. So if you don't want to go and do a super long trek, then you can go on to the best of Nepal trip, and then just see the best highlights from Nepal and do a bit of trekking. And so that's a really good trip from that perspective as well. Another question is, what currency is best to take on Nepal trips? It's a question from Instagram. I always take UK pounds and then change them when I get there. That's generally the easiest way of doing it. There are cash machines in Kathmandu, which are pretty reliable. There are a couple of cash machines in Namche on the way up. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So just think about, you don't want to be running out on your way onto the Everest Base Camp trek. Although technically, if you take a water to go bottle, you don't really need to spend any money while you're on the Everest Base Camp trek, because all your food included.
That's kind of what I was going to mention, is when it comes down to, what to spend. I mean, as you say, we're one of the companies that all of our meals are included when you're on the trek. So you don't need to worry about that. The things that you'll be buying is going to be any snacks. So the tea houses usually do a basic selection of snacks. There are going to be some shops in certain places. So Namche is great. There's loads of shops. Dingboche as well is kind of like the last place that I'll stock up on snacks and things. They're going to be basics, things like Snickers bars, Pringles, that type. But yeah, the other big expense is going to be water. So what we recommend to everyone is investing in a water to go bottle. In fact, a link has just gone in onto those groups now. And yeah, we recommend to everyone to take those because, first of all, it's better for the environment. It's, we're not using all of those reusable plastics. And also it's going to save you a lot of money. As you get higher and higher up the trek, water becomes much more expensive because it just gets carried that whole way. So they do start charging more the more days it needs to be carried. So investing in one of those, you can pretty much do the whole trip without spending anything while you're on the trek.
Well, I mean, you've got the Irish bar to go in, so Like,
yeah, I mean, okay, yeah.
I don't want to say you're going to be spending nothing, but you know, you have got the Irish bar there.
And you
You
could
have got.
not. Yeah.
Well, you couldn't not do that, and I think the other thing as well is you know the like the coffee shops and all of those sorts of things. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you get somewhere, it is nice to go and have a coffee.
In terms of
It is.
essential costs, they're going to be really reduced if you get like the water to go bottles. You're able to not spend too much on that, and then if you bring your snacks as well, so your essentials will be down. But yeah, those coffee shops in Namche are amazing. It's a real boost, especially when you've come back from base camp. That's something that makes me walk a little bit quicker going back towards them.
I mean, like the cheesecake is just immense. Like, and the chocolate brownie cake. Oh, like
It's good.
yeah. So, and
oh,
like
the apple pie is good.
The apple pie, the cinnamon roll from Tengbushe, that's always a good one as well.
Actually, if you've got any questions about the bakeries, Keith and I are the right people to ask, because between the two of us, we've probably tried all.
We've probably tested them all out. So, Anne's asked a question about how much money you should take with you. Now, obviously, the price doesn't include tips for the guides and the porters. Now, that's in your Vamoose app, is like how much we recommend depending on which trip you're on for the tipping policy. And to be honest, I can't remember what the EBC one is off the top of my head on the tipping policy. I was just trying to find it now, but I can't. But, you know, I think, you know, you're going to spend some money in Kathmandu on meals, because the meals aren't included in Kathmandu. You get breakfast while you're in Kathmandu, but you don't get. And again, how much you want to spend is really, you know, they've got food there for every budget. So it's, you know, if you want to go out for a really nice meal, you're still going to probably only be spending 15-20 pounds. And if you want to go out and spend a fiver, you could definitely go out and get something for £5 as well. So it's not overly expensive.
One of the things that I like to do, and you do as well, is there's a couple of restaurants in Kathmandu, especially at the end of our trip, that you and I will make a booking for however many people want to join us, and we usually do quite a nice final meal as a group. There's a couple of nice restaurants. Another thing that I'll add, and maybe we'll include that on the kit lists, but a couple of people have said it's quite a nice idea to bring just a slightly nicer outfit that you can leave in the hotel. You know, you'll be in trekking gear for 18 to 21 days, depending on your trip. Having something a little bit nicer to change into for that final meal that we do out is going to be good.
Yeah, so I think from the Everest Base Camp perspective, you're looking at about, per person in the group, you're looking at about what equates to like $100 to $150 a person in the on the for the porters and the guides and everybody else. So you need to have that. And then, like I say, you know, you're not going to spend a great deal of money, especially if you're not buying water. So, you know, if you had £300, £400 for your whole trip, you'd have money to spend. But again, it depends what you want to buy yourself, really, in terms of, you know, a lot of people go a little bit crazy when they get, you know, they'll buy their t-shirts.
But I've started being sent out with shopping lists. So the last time I came out, I had people saying, "Can you bring me back some of the sound bowls, the singing bowls?" And then what they also do is they do really good, I say knockoffs, but you know, they do the really good down jackets and
same but different. We like to
say same but different. You know, 100% North Face jackets that you can bring back. So yeah, quite often I'll get sent with a shopping list of things to bring back. So you can spend what you want really in those aspects.
Yeah, so that's, you know, that's what I would take out. Like I say, if you get back to Kathmandu and you've run out of money on the Everest Base Camp trek, like I say, you can take more out from the cash machine. I wouldn't take dollars out with me, because there's no point exchanging money twice. Obviously, the porters and the guides are happy to take UK pounds for the tip if you haven't got rupees. And then they'll quite happily go in and exchange it once we've sorted all the tips out. And the way we do our tips on our trips is we'll wait till we get back down to Lukla, and then as leaders from the trip, we'll collect all of the tips in from everybody. And it's advisable to tip. It's not a necessity, but I think when you get out there and you realize how hard the guys have worked for you, you are more than happy to tip at that point. Like I always say to people, like 3 days into the trip, I'll always say, like, if you were made to carry your duffel bag as well, like how much would you happily pay now to hand this over to somebody else and you not worry about it? And I think that always sort of wakes people up a little bit to go, yeah, do you know what? Like if I had to carry this up, then so. Yeah,
that's a fair point.
I think, the other thing we need to talk about quickly is, just the different trips themselves, really, just to go through them quickly. And I mean, like I said, we've got our EBC trip, which is our standard EBC trek. We do come back down slightly different than the way you go up. We do visit another village on the way back down, but it is the standard kind of 12-13 day trek to Everest base camp, get to base camp, come back down. So that's kind of our shortest trek, which kind of matches in duration with the Annapurna circuit trek. And Dave did a really good podcast with me on Annapurna. Dave is our Annapurna guru when it comes to that. Nobody else is allowed to get a look in on the Annapurna trek with Dave. He loves leading that trek. But so if you go onto the podcast and have a look at that, Dave did one. I think we did an Everest v Annapurna circuit trek. So obviously the Annapurna circuit trek is a whole lot quieter than the EBC trek. It's not as well trodden as the EBC trek for the amount of people that are there when you're there. And you do get to see some amazing sights. So if you think, actually, I do want to go to Nepal, but and I do want to go and see the mountains, but I'm not fussed about the whole Everest base camp, and sometimes it does get quite busy. Then the Annapurna circuit trek might be one for you to go and have a look at. And then obviously we get onto we've got the Gokyo Lakes trek, which is kind of a 3-day extension on from the standard Everest base camp trek. So you trek up to Everest base camp, and then you'll go round to the Gokyo Lakes and then come back down. So if you've got a little bit more time and you don't want to go up and back pretty much the same way, then the Gokyo Lakes trek is one to really, really look at. And again, once you've been to base camp, it then does become a whole lot quieter as you come back round to the Gokyo Lakes and back down again. So you're out doing that one next
month.
1st of May. So next month. Blimey, it's April now. I keep forgetting that. But obviously in terms of Nepal itself, there's 2 trekking seasons in Nepal. One trekking season is in the spring, so kind of March through till May. And then the second trekking season is in the autumn. So you're then going kind of maybe late September into October, and then kind of early November is kind of your 2 main trekking seasons to go. Have I got a preference? Not really. If you're going to go to EBC and you want to see base camp alive and busy with loads of people doing Everest, then you're going to want to go in the spring season. If you want to see Everest base camp nice and quiet, then you want to go in the autumn season, because most people will be summiting in the spring, not the autumn. Obviously, it doesn't really affect it for Annapurna circuit trek. We've then got our 2 mountaineering trekking peaks, if you like. So we've got Island Peak and we've got Mira Peak. For the Island Peak trips, that's a trip to Everest base camp, get to base camp, turn around, and then you get to go in summit Island Peak as well. And then for Mira Peak, you land in Lukla, so you take the same flight as you would on an Everest base camp trek, But when you get to Lukla, you hang a right and don't follow the main track to Everest Base Camp. Now, both of those mountaineering trips are both classed. Those mountains are both classed as what they call a trekking peak. So actually, your level of, you don't need a mountaineering level of experience. You can go and trek them. There are a few extra skills you need, but all of those are taught before you actually go and do the climb. So, you will need to use things like an ascender. So there will be ropes, and, your ascender is a piece of metal that clips to the rope that you have in your hand, and kind of you can use it to pull your way up, and it only works in one direction. But again, all those skills are taught beforehand. It can be done by anyone. But again, it's a little bit of a challenge compared to like the Everest Base Camp trek. And like we've said on previous episodes and on the podcast we did, with Everest Base Camp, it's great. But some people want to go and feel like they've got to the top of something. Whereas obviously leading your way to base camp, you are getting to the bottom of the mountain, not to the top of it. So some people will go, well, actually, I want to go and see Everest Base Camp because it's iconic and it's on my bucket list. But while I'm there, I'm going to add another 3 days onto my trip and go and summit a 6,000 meter plus mountain and get to the top of something as well. And so that trip really works well. That trip's got super busy for us. Mira Peak is getting busier and busier. Annapurna's, although actually this year we've sold quite a lot of Annapurna trips, but Annapurna has always been
about a week ago. 2 people signed up. Annapurna, really excited. They chatted to Dave at the NEC, the Outdoor Expo, and that was them sold. I mean, after chatting to Dave,
once you've spoken to Dave about Annapurna, there's no turning back.
No.
I'm surprised he's not on here now. Just telling people to ignore all the other ones and do Annapurna.
Like Annapurna again and again into the
But and then obviously the other trip we then got, like we mentioned earlier, is our best of Nepal trip, which I love that trip. Like, it takes in all of the highlights of Nepal. Nepal is such an amazing country to go and visit, and it should be on everyone's bucket list. And you don't necessarily have to go and do a long trek in Nepal to go and visit Nepal, but there are lots of other things that you want, so like Chitwan, like Bhaktapur, like Pokhara is the most amazing city in Pokhara. Like, the views at the lakes, like, it is just stunning. And you get to see that on Annapurna. You wouldn't get to see that on Everest Base Camp. People go, well, I don't want to trek to base camp, but do you see Everest on the Annapurna? No, you don't. So, for a lot of people, potentially you do need to go to Nepal twice just to kind of tick everything off that you want to do in Nepal. And it is, it's not a very big country, but it does offer so much, and there is so much there to do.
Yeah, it is becoming a little bit of an adventure capital. There's so much that you can do in terms of adventure sports. It's not just climbing. It's not just big mountains. The culture, and that's something that we do on all of our Nepal trips as well. Is if we can, we'll go and we'll do a bit of a tour of Kathmandu, go and see some of the temples, go and see, and soak up the culture. But there's just so much. And I mean, I'm allowed to say we've got some new stuff coming up.
We've got some new stuff coming up.
We've got some new stuff coming up. So, we're tapping into Nepal again. There's the more we look into it, the more we realise it has to offer. So it might be that you need to visit 2 times, maybe 3 times, but we're going to add a couple more places. So keep your eyes peeled.
But I think the thing is as well, like, if you just want to go to Nepal and you don't want to do you're not into your multi-day treks, then the best of Nepal trip would tick that off, and you could go and do that trek and then go, well, actually, do you know what? I've seen everything in Nepal that I've wanted to see, because that does include that in that trip. So I think it's that I really like the best in Nepal trip. I love the Everest Base Camp trip. I love the Annapurna circuit. I love Pokhara. Kathmandu is just like Thamel is just
insane,
crazy. Like, you know, it's like Marrakesh. Like, it's just one of those places that whenever you go there, and I just think, like, I love walking through Thamel thinking about all of the famous expeditions that have started. And, you know, you're walking along the same streets that all those people did before they went onto their expeditions.
Well, one of the things that you said to me, there's loads of bookshops in Kathmandu. So there's loads of these old...
It's the cheapest place. If you read a lot of mountaineering books, excuse me, it's the cheapest place in the world to buy books.
And there's I mean, they're not just all old dusty books. I mean, there's hundreds. These shops can be massive. And one of the things that you recommended to me was John Krakauer.
Into Thin Air.
What was the name? Into Thin Air. There you go. And you said to me on the first trip that we did, you went, go and pick yourself up a copy for like 50p. Right?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Go and pick up a copy of John Krakauer's Into Thin Air, and then as you're doing the journey up to base camp, read his account, and you can almost follow his account day by day with you trekking up to base camp day by day, and you can see his account compared to what you're seeing, and it's probably one of the best things that I did. I recommend it to people now, because 1996 I think was when he went, and the book got released either later that year or the next year, but to see how he explains it and then to see it now, you really do feel like you're walking through history, because so much of it hasn't changed. There are things that have changed, and and it has become a lot more well established, and the routes become better supplied and a little bit more modern, but you still feel like you're walking through history. It's brilliant. I would recommend if base camp's on your list, if it's something that you're doing with us, get the Into Thin Air by John Krakauer and read it as you're going.
But don't buy it before you go. Buy it when you get there.
No, don't buy it before you go. And then you could just leave it there. That's the other thing, you could just leave it. I mean, you can take it back with you if you want, but there's like exchange. Yeah, it's brilliant. They're really good.
Yeah, it's just I've a couple of times, like, I bought it. I remember buying it for someone in Namche on the way back down, because I walked past one of the shops and they had copies of it there, and I remember buying it for somebody, and because I've been talking about it while we were on the way up on the trip, and I was like, it's an amazing book, like, you need to read it. And then I saw it in the bookshop, and I just picked up a copy and gave it to them in the tea house in Namche before we started our walk back down to Lukla. And I think she'd finished it by the time she got to Lukla. Like, she was like, I just could not put that book down. Like, that was like, it was just such an amazing book. Like, hi to Rowena.
In front of you.
yeah, literally like that. Rowena has just said that Nepal is on her list for 2025. So you know where we are, Rowena. Like, if you've got any questions on which trip you should do, then please come in, like, ask us or ask the guys in the office, and we'd be more than happy to help you on that one.
Yeah, I had a really good chat with the guy today. So him and his friend have booked on to Everest Base Camp and the Gokyo Lakes, and we just ended up having a really good chat about the difference between that and the standard Everest Base Camp. Any questions that they had on kit, training, things like that. So if you've got general questions, either fire them into the live if you're watching and you've got general questions. Otherwise, if you are booking with us or you have booked with us, we're happy to help.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we have got there are a lot of resources on our website, on our YouTube channel, on the podcast. Like, we spend a lot of time in Nepal, so we have got a lot of resources. It's one of our favorite topics to
didn't Gareth almost use up all of his days or something like that?
He was very close to the amount of time he could spend in Nepal in 1 year. Yeah.
He said, you almost get funny, or maybe it was you. Sorry, it's about Morocco, but we've had similar things with Nepal. If we're going out twice in a season, 4 times in a year, 3 times in a year, that type of thing, where you do turn up back to passport control. And you had it with Morocco, where you went out on the surf and yoga trip, and then 5 days later you were going back out whitewater.
I was going back in again, yeah.
And the guy looked at you and was starting to wonder what it was that you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've just put a link to the podcast in the group, because I think if you look through the podcast, there's on topics of 1, 2. I think there's about 6 or 7 of the podcasts that have a Nepal kind of theme to them. So, there's probably about 5 hours worth of content there of us rambling on about Nepal. So it is one of our favorite countries to go to. And we want to do more and more out there, and there's more and more treks that we want to do. And, I think that's the thing. Like, when we first started, it was like, let's start with Everest Base Camp. Then we added Island Peak. Then we added the Annapurna Circuit. Then we added Mira Peak. So, and more people, some people have gone, like, we've got one guy going out this year who is doing Gokyo Lakes with you in May, and then he's going out to do Island Peak in the autumn. So he's going to base camp twice, and he's like, well, Gokyo Lakes was on my bucket list, and so was Island Peak. So I couldn't do them both at the same time.
That's it.
So I think, Jake, we have answered all of the questions that have come in. If anyone's got any quick questions before we sign off, then quickly do put them in the comments, and we will definitely answer them before we do. So if you are watching this episode of the Bucket List Adventure Travel Show and you're watching it after the event, so we're not live, we do still go through. So if you have got any questions, we will come and answer them as well. So do post them. If you are watching once we've finished and you're watching it on repeat, like you used to do in the old days, like if you go back and watch the replay, we will get round, we will answer them. So if you have got any questions on Nepal, then please feel free to add them in the comments, and we will, like you said, come back and answer them.
Well, I've got one for you then. So what's a bit of kit that you would take with you on a Nepal trip, or what's it, either a piece of clothing or equipment? What's something that you think is essential, one piece for your
essential, or what I would take with me as,
or what would you not go to Nepal without? Maybe there's a better question.
Firstly, my camera.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
And secondly, as I was quoted in Forbes magazine this week, my exped down booties would also come with me as well on any Nepal trip, and that's what I was.
Is that word for word how it was quoted? Keith's down booties.
I can't remember what. Hang on a second.
They are good though. So again, the first time I went to Nepal,
they went into the best list of camp slippers. So they were in the best list of camp slippers.
Really,
so
I mean, the first time I went, I bought a pair of these down-filled slippers from Kathmandu and took them up, and they were brilliant. And then actually, I did get given around Christmas time, but I think the year after was some North Face down slippers. But there's loads of brands that do them, and they're so good for tea houses. You've been in boots all day, or you've been in hiking shoes. Your feet are a little bit tired. You come in. You're going to get shouted at if you start traipsing mud through the tea houses. That's one thing. So you are going to need to either be in your socks or a clean pair of shoes. And putting on some nice warm slippers is really good.
I'm just trying to find my quote. So my quote was, looking for sleeping bags for your feet, Keith Crockford, head guide at the Bucket List Company, swears by his exped camp slippers and booties for their extreme warmth. I always carry these on all of my trips, from Kilimanjaro to Everest Base Camp to camping in the UK, he says. Because they fold up small and are lightweight, you can easily stuff them into your pack for expeditions, mountaineering trips, and ski hut tours. Like, I've never made that.
They are quite versatile. Like, I do take them on all of the trips, Kilimanjaro, or just camping in the UK. So it is something that I've bought and I invest on, and I'll put in all of my trips.
But I've never once made that comment. So I don't know how I ended up in Forbes magazine by commenting that.
I thought this was like a piece of you.
Someone has quoted me as saying that. So anyway, Jake, we have got to 45 minutes. We've done our 45 minutes worth of. We haven't stopped for an interval break. So I think as we've answered all of the questions, I think it's time for us to say goodnight from this Tuesday evening and allow people to get on with their tea or whatever it is they've got planned for this evening.
Until next time.
Not sure. Well, next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday would be
I'll see you next Tuesday.
I'll see you next Tuesday.